But Nick, I think you're missing the actual headline here. This is a landmark case, and it's actually meant that lawyers have had to decide on a legal definition for Shrek. A large, bold, dull green ogre with a broad, round face. On one hand, this definitely sounds like prompts to me. And on the other hand, I'm just concerned about the lack of onion in the definition.
It's very good.
I was really proud of that.
On point. That's perfect.
On today's episode, all our ChatGPT chats may soon be released. Apple thinks AI actually isn't that smart, and we look at why AI literacy may be like the floppy disk. Plus, a legal case between movie studios in Midjourney finally has given us a definition of Shrek. This is the third episode of June, and welcome to the Adjunct Intelligence podcast. It's the podcast that looks at artificial intelligence and where it has impact on higher education. My name is Dale, AI enthusiast, and I'm joined by Nick McIntosh, learning futurist. Nick, are you well?
Ticking along, mate. Thanks. How are you?
Optimistic, up and about. Let's jump into the news. Let's start with OpenAI. Sure, they have dropped the price of their reasoning model and released a new pro version this week, which apparently is very, very good. But there's actually been a lot of noise with the New York Times lawsuit, which is asking the ChatGPT parent company to preserve and hold all data. Yes, even those ones you've actually deleted, as evidence in a copyright case. This impacts the free users, the plus users, and the pro users, which is me. I won't lie, my initial thought was to go back to some of my more personal conversations with me and ChatGPT and reflect if I'd comfortable with them being read. I feel okay about it. A reminder, though, to be careful what you're putting in these tools. They're new, and everyone's still learning how to use them, and whilst OpenAI is crying, we'll protect our customers' data, and appealing, there's still a lot of groundwork to go in this case. It does kind of point to a survey which I saw that asked for universities to provide a safe, secure AI solution as they're learning to kind of use it as well. And cases like this are proof in point.
Yeah, look, interesting tensions here with the EU's GDPR and the EU AI Act when that gets off the ground, though then perhaps that should be if. Given the delay that we discussed in a previous episode, I think the right to be forgotten is key. And I'd agree with you on the importance of remembering to be careful what you put into these tools, especially, as you say, if using the free versions, right? So that old axiom, if it's free, you are the product. I think that rings especially true here.
Let's stay with OpenAI for a second. CEO Sam Altman this week wrote his last AI assisted blog, that's from his words, ironically titled The Gentle Singularity. It softly laid out the next couple of years on planet Earth. The CEO alluded to radical technological change, but Altman also predicted that the 2030s won't actually feel that different, which that gives me some solace. People will still love families, they'll still swim in lakes, but he draws parallels to how subsistence farmers would view modern jobs as fake, suggesting future work will seem equally artificial to us, but feel meaningful to those doing it. We are past the event horizon, Sam says. The takeoff has started, he proclaims. And his 3-year roadmap starts with agents getting better and better, there's systems making novel scientific discoveries, and in 2027, the robot revolution is going to be here, and they should be able to perform many real-world tasks. Sustainability has always been a question around using AI and the big energy costs that come from all these graphic chips. But Sam alleges that the average ChatGPT query averages the same running cost as what an oven uses in 1 second, which, when you pair with productivity gains, it's apparently a no-brainer. The singularity, gentle or brash, is the bit that I kind of actually really appreciate from Sam. Wonders become routine and then table stakes, which I think is why we keep moving the goalposts on AGI. The magic things that LLMs do now would have seemed like sentient human beings about 10 years ago, but now we're grumpy when there's downtime, which there's been a lot of this week. Sam talks to building brains for the world and that it's the time for the idea guys to have their moment. This sounds very personal to me.
Love it.
This represents one of the most comprehensive public statements from a major AI leader, let's be honest, and one that's probably a little bit more positive than we've seen from other people looking at you, Dario. And it's really about the trajectory and timeline for artificial intelligence and beyond. Altman's big message is the transformation is already underway, it will accelerate dramatically, but if managed correctly, it could usher in an era of unprecedented human flourishing. The blog concludes with his hope. May we scale smoothly, exponentially, and uneventfully through superintelligence. I hope that my Sam impression was pretty good there.
On point, utterly on point. I'm loving the optimism as well in this. Like, and I got to say, this is a great opportunity to plug the amazing Tim Urban of Wait But Why. His AI Revolution series is a sneak peek of what this superintelligence might look like. If you don't know the name, you've almost definitely seen his TED Talk. So Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator, viewed nearly 60 million times. It's funny, it's insightful, and it's very, very human, right? So this is the same style and approach that he brings to the Wait But Why blog series that he's been writing a little less than I would like for the last few years now, but just like his TED Talk, equal parts hilarity and insight. And his 2-part series on the artificial intelligence revolution Is a bit dated now, 2015 from memory. But what it does is it breaks down a bunch of really important concepts around AGI, artificial superintelligence, and an engaging, I want to say, readily available fashion for non-experts. And it closes with what a world in which we have ASI might look like. I'd really recommend this, not least given how prescient a lot of it seems, given it was written 10 years ago, so AKA in the stone age of AI. So massive fan, definitely worth checking out.
Let's move away from OpenAI for a second and look at some other big tech players. Amazon has outlined a further $20 billion in data centers, and Facebook's parent company Meta is aiming to claw back its spot as being taken seriously in the AI world. Zuckerberg, he's on the lookout for a new superintelligence lab, personally hiring them himself. I can't say that Meta's AI efforts have been taken seriously, and when I play with them, they're fine. But I always get the feeling that Zuck is kind of reading them personally and sending them off to advertisers to target mattress companies at me. That being said, Meta has a huge stockpile of GPUs, which is apparently the big draw card for people who may want to, that top tier talent that may want to have real impact in this AI space. For me, this is a case of follow the money. Our infrastructure kind of wobbles have been called out around, oh, there might not be any more spend. This isn't going away. It's only become more of a life in our apps, in our shopping experiences, and of course, in the classroom.
Moving beyond the classroom into government regulation, US Food and Drug Administration has launched ELSA, so a new AI tool set to dramatically accelerate the notoriously slow process of bringing new drugs to market. So at the moment, a new medicine's journey from discovery to patient can reportedly take as much as 10 to 12 years, with as much as 6 to 7 of that, a half and more, taken up with critical trials and regulatory reviews alone. So this procedural limbo not only is holding up just potentially life-saving treatments, but it's costing millions of dollars a day potentially. So ALSA is designed to remove these bottlenecks. So taking scientific review processes that took days, completing them potentially in minutes. The hope is that this increased efficiency leads to safer, more effective medicines getting to patients sooner. I think kind of the discovery realized with AlphaFold, though applied to real life, if you like, medicine and immediate with consumer grade things there, and not, in fact, something we'll look back as episode one of a real life AMC Studios production, thinking Walking Dead, The Last of Us, and things like that. Like, fingers very much crossed there.
I hope. I hope. AI literacy is like a floppy disk. This is a claim that comes from Professor Jason Lodge this week in a really good blog that we'll put in the show notes. The crux of the argument is that these AI experiences will eventually meet us where we're at, so that we should actually focus on human skills. That Gen AI at the moment more or less rhymes with every introduction of the new technology before it. Web browsers, computers, and the mad rush to kind of build dedicated curriculum around it is perhaps not the answer. Jason calls for a focus on what makes us uniquely valuable as embodied, social, and organic creatures who are compelled to be with, empathize, and learn from, and think with one another. Our ability to navigate human networks and our role within them is our superpower. We've spoken about this previously in kind of those epoch skills. I almost vehemently disagreed and objected to Jason's comments until the last paragraph because it said basic awareness of these systems and limitations is valuable. And I agree. That's the bit that I was like, oh, you almost lost me, Jason, because we do actually need to consider these.
Yeah, look, love Jason comments and pieces in the space, strong as he does from the id psych space, like using that lens. I think he's absolutely on point. And it's interesting to see that even the labs are moving to this middle space. Very recently, Anthropic released a new AI fluency course looking at skills that will last, right? So not least when to use it, but also how to collaborate with it effectively, keeping that human in the loop and centralizing us rather than sort of pushing us off to the side, which I am here for. So yes, please to that.
It's a good conversation to be having. Apple had their big developers conference this week, and compared to the splash that they made last year with Apple Intelligence, the focus was more on their brand new user experience, Liquid Glass, and whether or not Siri is actually going to be useful. Spoiler alert, not yet. The decision has polarized the design community, but I think in a world where most UX is going the way of text or voice input, so think about our chatbots, it's actually really interesting to see one of the big players double down on a user experience that is distinctly not about that. On-device large language model access was also mentioned very, very smallly. I think this is actually the really, really juicy bit of what Apple's doing. They've got a foundation models framework, giving the apps you use daily access to Apple's own 3 billion parameter model. A quick lesson for listeners, current state for most apps that have AI embedded, so your toothbrush, all the other things that have AI in them, they're usually just using OpenAI's API, and they kind of bar the server cost and pass it back to the customer. So for this to change to on-device, it changes the pricing model and opens up a whole bunch of opportunities. The example that I really loved was an app I use, it's Cal AI, which tracks your food and your calories and has a decent subscription cost to do so. It currently uses OpenAI's LLM to help it take I had a burger today to that burger had this much protein, this much carbohydrates, and what does that look like when that all happens on device without those server costs? For me, this is a bit of a continuation of Apple's strategy, in that a large percentage of what you need to do could be handled on the device, and Google is actually following this similar with an Android approach as well. But on occasion, you'll need to offload to ChatGPT or Gemini or something else, so this is a bit of a continuation there. Let's be frank, punters still see Apple as behind in the AI race, which is why I found them releasing a research paper this week talking to the many flaws of reasoning models, and that they're not actually reasoning, they're just doing pattern recognition. Illusion of comprehension has been thrown around the zeitgeist this week, and many news sources have used it as a way to get everyone to take a deep breath and relax on the pending apocalypse that's coming to our employment. It's okay, the robots aren't that smart, says Apple. In short, what the Apple scientists did was they gave Claude, O3 Mini, and DeepSeek R1, they got them to complete a puzzle called the Tower of Hanoi. You're moving disks onto pieces of dowel and they can't touch, and Google it. It did okay at the easy ones. And as those puzzles got more difficult, the AI really struggled. In fact, it stopped. It stopped using tokens to even try to do it, and it gave up faster, even when these models were given step-by-step instructions on how to complete the tasks, showing that the intelligence and reasoning is perhaps hitting a wall. But when I thought about it, pattern recognition is how I actually go about most of my day-to-day tasks. So large language models, I empathize with you. We're all just trying to do our best, and illusion of comprehension is not something I take too much offense to.
So I'd say, this is a masterclass in reframing by Apple, right? As you said, they are behind in the AI race. And if you can't win the race, move to finish line. And that's what they've done. And I think smart play, well done to them. I think that the second thing, though, at a more personal level, I completely agree with you. A huge part of my job is pattern recognition, is routine tasks, which, as most jobs are, if we really stop and think about it, variables change, context change, those that you're working with change. But not that much is that unusual in the day to day. And you stack enough tasks and ultimately you have a job. I think what people are looking for, or they think that they've exposed with this, is that these are not the super assistants, the Jarvises, or insert AI from movies here that people have perhaps thought. I would put a grain of salt on this grain of salt that this Apple paper has pinch rather has brought to the whole conversation.
In summation, the Tower of Hanoi at 8 steps is very difficult, as I understand it.
Google it. Google it. It is not an easy thing to do. In other news, Hollywood's biggest players are hitting back against AI. So Disney and Universal have sued image generator Midjourney, accusing it of outright piracy for using famed characters from Darth Vader to the minions from Despicable Me. This marks a first for major studios directly targeting AI, a move strongly supported by other groups in the creative space who are fighting their own AI battle. And so on a recent Prof G podcast, Scott Galloway noted an analogous moment in the early days of Google, when existing content owners and producers like the New York Times, Condé Nast, and other major publishers missed a crucial opportunity to form a united front and effectively, I guess, build a moat around their valuable IP, instead prioritizing traffic and advertising. He argues that this allowed Google to effectively make $1 off their content while they made pennies. And it seems like these creative companies see the writing on the wall and are determined not to go down without a fight. So actively protecting their IP and demanding compensation from AI companies. And frankly, more power to them.
It's one that needs to be considered, but Nick, I think you're missing the actual headline here. This is a landmark case, and it's actually meant that lawyers have had to decide on a legal definition for Shrek, who will now be forever termed a large, bold, dull green ogre with a broad, round face, brown eyes, and highly distinctive trumpet-shaped ears. On one hand, this definitely sounds like prompts to me. And on the other hand, I'm just concerned about the lack of onion in the definition. You can find the links to all these great developments in the podcast show notes and, of course, in Nick's weekly newsletter available through LinkedIn. Also, in your feed this week, we're bringing you a look at whether AI isn't making us smarter, but perhaps dumber. And we'll be taking a punt at group work and what happens when your new teammate isn't one who ghosts you, but one who runs off a server. That's the headlines. To get all the things you need to know about AI and higher education, hit that subscribe button and the notification button. Signing off for now. Until then, stay curious, stay intelligent, and stay the human in the loop.